So just when you think you've had enough when it comes to watching knockout round upsets in the FIFA World Cup of 2022, the FIFA World Cup says, you know what? It's the last round of group matches, and we're going to give you another big upset. So, the breaking news update for those of you who are just joining us and who, of course, would have doubtless watched the matches that took place, the last round of group stage matches, which featured Brazil taking on Cameroon and, of course, Serbia taking on Switzerland. Now, Brazil played a much changed playing 11 as was kind of expected considering they already made it through to the group out of the group stages. They will in fact wanting to rest a few players ahead of the knockouts, and then them resting players ended up costing them because Cameroon ended up beating them 1-0 courtesy of a Vincent Abubakar goal in the 90th minute. In fact, it came in injury time. The goal was historic in one simple way. Brazil have now lost to a side from Africa for the first time in the history of FIFA World Cups. You heard that right. Before today, Brazil had never ever lost to an African team in the FIFA World Cup. Cameroon are now the first team to actually, notch up that illustrious feat. They have become the first team from Africa to beat Brazil for the first time in World Cup history. Now, unfortunately, if you're a Cameroon fan or if you were backing Cameroon or rooting for Cameroon to make it far, bad news for you, they aren't making it to the knockout. So this was as close to a consolation win as would be possible because whilst they did end up getting the victory, which to be fair, they needed if they were to have any chance of making it to the knockouts, the match between Serbia and Switzerland didn't quite go their way. They would have needed that match to finish a draw, or better yet, for Serbia to actually get a win. Unfortunately, Serbia have been beaten 3-2 by Switzerland. Now, that match too was crazy in its own way if you haven't already seen it. I mean, in the first half itself, it was 2-all, and the amount of goals that was flying, it was crazy. And then, of course, in the early parts of the 48th minute, Switzerland ended up getting a winner. But, considering the number of goals that were flying in, most people would have been forgiven for thinking that maybe, just maybe, there were a few more goals that were actually left in the game after that. Unfortunately, what happened was that Freuler's goal was, in fact, the last goal that was scored in that particular match. But if you're a Switzerland fan, you'd be happy with that. Don't forget, Switzerland had drawn one match and lost the other prior to this. So, what happens now is that they are through to the next round. In fact, my apologies, Switzerland actually won 2 games. But what happens thereafter is now that Switzerland are through to the next round. They're through easily, and truth be told, even if they were drawing, they would have been through most likely anyway. So Serbia actually needed to win if Cameroon were to go through, but of course, Serbia winning could very well have put them up. In fact, in their own right, they could have been competing for a spot in the top two. Remember, Brazil already through to the knockout, so that round, that loss ahead of the round 16 really makes no difference to them, except for maybe a little bit of a bump in momentum. Beyond that, really no problems. They're already through, and in fact, are now through as group toppers. Cameroon, though, again, interesting story there that Cameroon have always been one of those teams who have been the great entertainers of the FIFA World Cup. You remember in the 80s as well, you had Roger Miller, who, despite being on the wrong side of 40, was leading Cameroon to the knockout stages of the FIFA World Cup. You were thinking, okay, maybe this team could do something similar, but unfortunately, they didn't end up making it. But still, getting a win over Brazil, I mean, you can say, yes, it was a second string Brazil, but you only beat the team that's in front of you, and in that sense, Cameroon did exceedingly well to get that win. The only hilarious part about that entire goal, though, was that Abu Bakr unfortunately celebrated by taking his shirt off. He was already on a yellow card, and then he ended up getting sent off because he got shown a second yellow card. That was the only part which I think he'd probably regret just a bit, but given what a spankingly good goal he scored against Brazil, don't think he'd care that much because even when he was walking off, he was like, yeah, okay, no problem, I'm getting sent off. But I just scored the goal of my life and a goal that will go down in history as the first winning goal for an African nation against Brazil in the FIFA World Cup. But the other news that I have to also bring to you guys is that now, well, the group stages are done. The knockout rounds have now been set. So tomorrow onwards, you're going to be seeing the knockout rounds take place. So that is, of course, the other major thing that we will be focusing on from tomorrow onwards. Don't forget, there are only 2 more spots left in that, in the knockout rounds to be filled in. And now what has happened is that those matches are also set in stone. Remember, tomorrow you will be having a certain number of matches. There'll be two matches taking place. One 8:30 p.m., one 12:30. So now the other matches, which were of course South Korea was supposed to be playing in that regard, but so South Korea, remember earlier today, they actually put in, they sealed their qualification. It's really been an amazing World Cup in that sense. If you look at this underdog teams, and again, Switzerland making it through along with Brazil. Wonderful. Remember, Switzerland made a pretty decent run of things during the last year's European Championships as well. So we'll be excited to see how it is that they fare. They will be taking on, of course, Portugal in all likelihood. But anyway, I'll just take a few of you guys' comments before we call it a night. Rohit Roy says that Cameroon, South Korea, Morocco, Arabs, Japan beating the big teams. By Arab, you mean Saudi Arabia, no doubt. Beating the big teams is the highlights of this World Cup. One of the best World Cups in the last decade, at least. I mean, yeah, you can say that the Qatar World Cup in itself, littered by controversies coming into the tournament, even in the tournament itself. But the quality of football has been spectacular. There's no two ways about it. We can't deny that. Love Rami says that Martinelli and Rodrigo were giving their best to score, but unfortunately, Cameroon's night tonight. Kudos to them. Indeed, a World Cup full of upsets. Also, Brazil have never lost against any African team. I'll add to that until now, because Cameroon have beaten them, and what a historic win it will be for them. Deepak R says that clearly no favorites with multiple upsets happening in the group stages already. From round 16, it could be any team. You know what, Deepak? I wholeheartedly agree with you, because quite frankly, this is it has really been a World Cup of upsets, and perhaps more importantly, the knockouts are a bit of a lottery. So it doesn't matter how, if you're the better team on paper or not. You could have one bad day, the match could go to penalties. You don't really know what's going to happen, and the so-called underdog team can get a win, because in the knockout stages, it's always about who's better on the day rather than who's better overall. So in that sense, should be an interesting knockouts for sure. I'm definitely excited about it starting from tomorrow onwards. Corporate guy is asking if I'm alone in office. The answer to that would be no. There's a few people in office, but of course it is, well, 2:40 in the morning as I'm talking to you guys. There aren't going to be too many other people in office. We're here because the sporting event's going on and we're watching it along, and of course joining you guys on YouTube afterwards to discuss it. That's the reason I'm in office, but there are a few other people along with me. They're just now on this video. Anyhow, I'll bring an end to this particular live video. I still have a couple of things to do in case you're wondering before I get to wrap up and call it a night. Of course, I'll be joining you guys tomorrow, but thank you guys all once again for joining us on this particular live stream. Believe you me, we love interacting with you guys, because that's a really part of the fun of watching sport, is that you can share all of that with you guys, and of course have a few discussions. So I enjoy that a lot. Thank you all for joining us again. Don't forget, shower your love, like, share, subscribe, leave us a comment, tap the bell icon so you know when we're going live, and of course follow us on Twitter, Instagram and Facebook as well. Last but not least, download the SportsTech app. You'll get all the FIFA World Cup highlights for free, whether it be goal by goal, full match highlights, and better yet, you can make it a choice of your language. You can watch the highlights in either English or Hindi. Thank you all once again for joining us. I'm calling it a night, so good night, adios, take care, bye bye, and I'll see you guys all tomorrow.